California is projected to lose 3 seats, New York 2. Also going to lose a seat, Minnesota, Oregon, Rhode Island, Illinois, all blue states. Who's getting these? Texas, Florida, Idaho, and Utah. I mean, this looks like game over.
Bill Maher got fed up with all the woke nonsense coming his way on this episode of Real Time with Bill Maher and all the woke people going after Donald Trump and what he's trying to do with the deportations and the judges going after Donald Trump, telling him he can't do certain deportations and things like that. And Bill Maher is just tired of all the woke nonsense, and he absolutely goes off on this episode here of Real Time with Bill Maher, stunning his woke audience. Let's check it out.
But here, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who doesn't follow politics that closely. And they're the Venezuelan gang members. Why are we even arguing about this? They shouldn't be in this country. This guy's finally doing something about it. He's kicking them out. And a judge, one judge told him to stop. Well, what law is this? That any judge anywhere can... I don't know why I'm using that accent, but... I went into my stupid voice, but why is it that one judge anywhere can say, oh, a president can't do this? I mean, that's something that's a little abstruse to a lot of people.
Look, I think you can make the argument. The question is, can you get to where people are listening to the argument? The thing about the election, the thing about politics right now, is Donald Trump wins people who don't like to think about politics. Right? That's very, very clear in all the polling. If you follow the news, you voted for the Democrats, by and large. If you don't follow the news, you voted for him. And I'm not saying that that means that people who voted for him are less smart or anything like that, but the problem the Democrats have, the problem that Andrew's argument has, that my argument has, that your argument has, is how do you reach people? It's not even really, I think, that the problem is people hear that the Venezuelan gang members are being deported and what is the judge's power over this? They don't hear about it at all, oftentimes. Right? I mean, this stuff is all in the news, and if you're tuned it out, it's very hard to get to you. And so the thing that I think they understand, I mean, you've had Steve Bannon on the show, right?
I think we have him coming up. So yes, we've had him, and we're going to have him again, and then he's going to have us.
His whole thing is you flood the zone. Right? His whole thing is you flood the zone with bullshit, because the pipe of information for most people is pretty narrow. And even if they hear about one thing, they don't hear about the other 8.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that if you watch the news, you voted for Donald Trump. Because, I mean, a lot of people flipped to voting for Donald Trump that voted for Joe Biden the year prior, or who has said in the past that they would never vote for Donald Trump ever, because they do follow the news, because they know what's going on out there, and mostly in the culture, right? If mostly culturally, that's what most of the United States care about. They don't, when you get into the actual political issues and bills and laws and things like that, people just get bored. They just kind of tune out. They don't care too much. But whenever you start talking about men competing in women's sports, or things that are going on in the classroom, what's being taught to kids in the classroom, what's being withheld from parents, what kind of information are they not getting that's going on with their kids in the classroom. That's where people start to really care. They start to get emotionally charged. They start to not just vote for Donald Trump themselves, but start to tell their friends about these things. They start to share the viral videos on social media, things like that. I think it's very obvious that the people who are not as much in an echo chamber voted for Donald Trump and wanted Donald Trump to win, versus the other side who are still voting for Kamala Harris and voting against Donald Trump and wanting him to lose. They're very much in their echo chamber, and they just refuse to acknowledge that they're wrong. I think it's pretty obvious, right?
They don't hear about the other 10. You overwhelm the media, you overwhelm people, and also you recognize that most people don't want to think about it, right? And so you can get a lot done under the cover of chaos, and it's a very genuine problem. It's not a crazy strategy they're running. The one thing that is crazy about it is they flood their own zone. They don't know what they're doing. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. They don't know the people they're firing. They don't know what might break. So we don't really know what are the things that are going to break through, because it turned out planes started dropping out of the sky, or some group they fired led to a nuclear disaster, right? Like, they also do not have a great sense of what they're doing. They don't mean to be deporting some of the people they appear to be deporting. But we don't know what will break through, because fundamentally you're trying to convince people who are not watching the show right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of... This is a great tweet here by Eric Abinante, where he's kind of summing up this whole thing. He says, Bill Maher panelist claims Trump won. And this is a great tweet by Eric Abinante right here. He says, Bill Maher panelist claims Trump won with those who don't follow the news. Ezra Klein, Donald Trump wins people who don't like to think about politics. If you follow news, you voted for the Democrats. If you don't follow the news, you voted for him talking about Donald Trump. How do you reach people? And then Eric says, MAGA follows the news. They just don't blindly follow the news like liberals. And I would have to agree with that. It's like, if you watch one night of CNN or MSNBC, you basically know how every single leftist thinks versus there's many different thought patterns on the right wing, many different ways of thinking on the right wing, especially when it comes to like geopolitics and things like that. Many people think really different ways. But like I said, the cultural issues, I think, really got people going on the right wing and just in the center, and some people even on the left, where they're just like, okay, enough is enough. We can't deal with this anymore. We have to just vote for common sense. And that's kind of what happened. That's why Donald Trump won the popular vote for the first time in a very long time. We also have this clip here from Eric Abinante where Bill Maher starts talking about how much the tide has really shifted and how many states are going from blue to red. And it's getting crazy. It's getting undeniable how much the culture is shifting, how much the tide is turning. And Bill Maher is accepting the fact where there's other people out there in his audience and on his panel that are not willing to accept that fact.
California is projected to lose 3 seats, New York 2, also going to lose a seat, Minnesota, Oregon, Rhode Island, Illinois, all blue states. Who's getting these? Texas, Florida, Idaho, and Utah. I mean, this looks like game over, and the reason why people are voting with their feet is a lot of what your book is about.
Yeah,
taxes and regulation. I certainly been screaming about it forever. I did 3 years with a sign here that said, how long is it going to take me to get my solar hooked up? 3 years. Talking about it on television in this state. You couldn't do it. This state has almost 400,000 regulations. I just put in a new roof because the fire, I thought, oh, let's get a roof that's not going to burn up. 2 inspections. Why are you inspecting my roof? It's my fucking roof. If it falls on me, that's my problem. And we're taxed more than any other state. People are leaving these kind of states for places where they're not, they feel the heavy breath of government on them. It's not that hard for Democrats to understand this, but they seem to be incapable of doing anything about it.
So we poll this. They're leaving on cost of living. That's all part of it. They're leaving because they can't afford homes. And it's a huge, not just political problem.
But why is, that's still a negative. The person who's running that state or that city or that area that you're leaving, it's the cost of living is so high that people are forced to leave, forced to uproot their lives and go somewhere else. That's not like a get out of jail free card. That's not like, oh, I don't have any accountability here. That's still a problem. And let's be real, that's not the only reason why people are leaving. If you look at, I don't know, I've never seen anyone honestly say that's like a contributing factor, but it's almost never the main factor. People will do a lot of things to not have to uproot their lives, right? They're leaving their family behind, possibly. They're having to pull their kids out of the school that they're going to go somewhere else and just be around completely new people, complete strangers, having to leave jobs, maybe take a pay cut to go somewhere else, whatever. It's not like a thing that most people want to do. So there's probably more than just cost of living for why people are leaving. And almost every single time you see a famous person leave, obviously they're famous, so they probably have more money. They don't cite cost of living, right? They always cite, just the ridiculous rules, the ridiculous laws, right? The lockdowns in 2020 really drove a whole lot of people out of California. The crime rate in New York City is driving a lot of people out of there. Same thing in San Francisco. The fact that they're not trying to fix the crime problem by having less crime, but just raise the threshold for what constitutes a crime, it's made a lot of people leave because they're just like, okay, this is insanity. Or the homeless problem. Like, all these problems go into it. I think cost of living is a contributing factor for sure, but it's not the only thing.
Problem. Those numbers you just gave. After 2030, if that holds, a Democrat could win every state Kamala Harris won, win Michigan, win Pennsylvania, and I'm just blanking on the third blue wall state, win Michigan, win Pennsylvania, and win Wisconsin, and lose the presidential election, right? The blue wall would no longer be enough for them to win. And you have to take that.
You mean they could win those 3 states and still
lose the presidential? That's how bad it is, right?
Wow.
And that's because they are driving people out, working class families out of the states they govern, because the cost of living is too high. And the cost of living is too high in part for regulatory reasons, in part for taxes. But the big problem is they just don't have enough of the things people need. Not enough homes, not enough energy, not a government capable of delivering. And they've been treating that as not a real problem. You were talking about your solar sign. California high-speed rail, it's a huge disaster, but nobody's ever done anything about it. If you tried to build it again, it would go the exact same way.
High-speed rail?
Yeah, California's high-speed rail.
I think we first passed it in 2008. Mm-hmm. I think they just voted about something about it again. It's projected. Just give up. Just to build, I think, from Bakersfield to Merced. Who the hell wants to go from Bakersfield to Merced? And they couldn't do that.
I went out and toured this for the book. And the people building it were perfectly clear with me. Look, this doesn't work if we don't do LA to San Francisco. And they don't have the money to do LA to San Francisco. And they don't have the regulatory structure to do it. They have been clearing. They started clearing the rail track through environmental review. The whole point of high-speed rail is it's good for the environment.
Right.
They started clearing it through environmental review in 2012. By the end of 2024, when I was fact-checking the book, it was almost done. The reviews were...
Oh, yeah. It's bro, there's something weird going on. Like, I don't want to say it's straight up money laundering, but it's probably... I don't know if it's money laundering, but it's... I think these politicians are just pocketing a whole lot more money than they say they are. And almost every single time they're investigated, they get found out of crimes, right? If it gets found out that they are hoarding money, they're holding money, they're pocketing more money than they're supposed to be. Almost every single time. And that should be a prime example. That should be a prime, like, hey guys, something's going on here. You know, if it's taking you 12 years to just clear the land to lay a railroad, something's going on there, right? And I mean, Bill Maher is correct. Nobody wants to live in these states. And this is also a big factor why as well, because of how much they get taxed. They get taxed so much in these blue states, in blue cities, and then they spend it on nonsense. They spend the tax dollars on nonsense. And that's not just for blue states and blue cities. That's for the entire country in general, I think. I think everybody gets taxed way too much. And then especially when you look at what the tax dollars are being spent on, it's almost always nonsense and things that don't benefit the American taxpayers almost ever. But it's really heightened, not just the amount that is being paid in these blue states, but also what they're being spent on, what the money's being spent on is also a lot worse in these blue states most of the time, 90% of the time. Anyway, remember in the comments he asked thing about Bill Maher absolutely cooking the woke left and cooking, you know, his woke audience members, this guy Ezra Klein and many other people out there who are spewing this same nonsense. I remember in the comments he asked thing about this whole Bill Maher versus the woke cult situation.